Welcome to a very special episode of Mighty Finland podcast. My name is Ville, and with me here, as usual, I have Ville.
Hi.
Now, some keen-eared listeners might have already noticed that we're not speaking Finnish as we usually do. Why, you might ask? Well, today we have a very special guest with us, former Marine, now U.S. Army Green Beret captain. Welcome, Bo.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, lack of Finnish is my fault. It's all right.
Yeah, blame Bo. So, before we go any further, I'll just briefly address the language switch. To our loyal listeners, don't worry, we're not planning on switching over to English full-time. We'll continue to operate mainly in Finnish, but today's episode is going to be done in English. So if that's a problem, you can always ask your mom or somebody else to translate for you.
Yes, eli jos et tosta ottanut selvää, jos ei Lontoa taivu, niin se on ihan fine. Meidän ei ole tarkoitus vaihtaa meidän konseptia pois meidän äidinkielestä. Tehdään vaan tämä jakso englanniksi sen takia, että vieraan suomen kielen taito on vähän heikon puoleinen vielä. Mutta pysy messissä ja hauska jakso.
Welcome to the Mighty Finland podcast. This show is produced together with our awesome sponsors, Varusteleka and Protection Group Denmark.
All right, so I'm still pondering between Guess Who's Back and Good Morning Finland, but
Little Vietnam accent.
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. I've always wanted to say that. But yeah, a little bit about us. Mighty Finland podcast is essentially a podcast on all things military in Finland, and apparently now even more than just Finland, and we're super excited about that. And like you just heard, us, the host, we have the same name, so yeah, you're not going to remember that anyway, but it's easier for you guys. All right. Usually we like to talk about the Finnish military with other Finns, but this time we're going to talk about the U.S. military and the Finnish military through the eyes of a U.S. service member. Were you adding something?
I was just going to say that maybe we'll just do a short, brief introduction about ourselves to new listeners.
Yeah.
Take us through it, Ville.
All right. So before we move on to our guests, we'll quickly run you through our short service history. So yeah, we have the same name, but we also essentially have the identical service history. We did our mandatory military service as a part of what was then called the Rapid Deployment Force. And that was for a year, and then we did a tour to Lebanon as a part of the UNIFIL mission. Since then, we've been active reservists, and apparently now we're also podcasters as well. When we say reservists, I know it sounds bad to our international listeners, or in an international context.
Sounds bad to our U.S. Special Forces member.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, U.S. Special Forces as reservists too.
Yeah. True. But yeah, the whole concept of reservists is a bit different in Finland, but we'll get to that later. And yeah, let's move on to our guest and what he has to say.
Yeah, so once again, welcome, Bo. Welcome to Finland.
I appreciate it. And I gotta say, I'm excited to be here. Been following you guys for like a year, and it's about it's pretty much my main porthole into the Finnish Defense Force. So what you guys are doing are great, and I'm really happy to be here.
It's always nice to meet a fan.
So before we go into your service history anymore, what brings you to the cold, dark north?
Well, I'm here in Finland because of, see if I say this right, Ihana Vaimoni.
Sweet. That was good.
Yeah, perfect. So should we switch to Finnish now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can do my survival Finnish. That'd be great. I'm sure your listeners will love it. I'm here because of my wife, Yona. We met in the U.S. and here meeting her family as well as planning our wedding here this summer. Here in Helsinki. So it's good to be here. I've always kind of wanted to visit this area of the world. So this has been an exciting week for me.
Awesome.
And it's not even the cold, dark north right now. It's
just
quite
cold gray north.
It's surprisingly light. It's making sleeping kind of hard.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Tell us, who are you? And can you give us a brief summary of, like, not even brief, you can talk all you want. What do I care? Of your service history and kind of what made you join the military?
Sure. So I'm your standard stock size white American, pretty normal stuff. No, I came from a pretty normal background, grew up playing sports, American Jalkapallo.
Oh, and that's football.
Oh yeah. And just had more or less a normal childhood. I'm the only member of my family that has joined the military. So that was kind of an interesting decision that I made in college. I walk into class one day, saw a Marine in in the quad doing some pull-ups, and I'm like, that looks hard. I'd like to try that. And you know, it's been good ever since. My entire post-college professional career has been in the United States Marine Corps. When I graduated, I commissioned as a second lieutenant. And I've been in the Marine Corps for about 7 years, and recently made the switch to the U.S. Special Forces, or more affectionately known as the Green Berets. So it's been a good time. I think, to your question about the reason why I joined is, I mean, there's always the standard patriotic duty that I think all of us in this room can understand. You know, you all to Finland, myself to the United States, and also our duty to doing what's right and doing what's right by the world. You know, the Green Berets motto is De Oppresso Liber, to free the oppressed. And I think that's something that, you know, was always kind of ingrained in me, you know, always standing up to the bully for the younger person. So I think my reason for joining is not just because the Marine Corps had really good uniforms or it's badass to be a special operator, but really because it gives me an avenue to do what I think helps the world become a better place.
Yeah, that motto actually sounds like it's easy to stand behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And things can get a little bit more gray sometimes, but on a whole, right? Like I think that's always been a part of me. So I think that's kind of why I joined the military. And plus, hard to find a place where you can challenge yourself more, right? And do so along the best of the best. So I think that's the reason why I joined the military to begin with. And haven't looked back. It's been great. It's been a hell of a road. So.
All right. Can you sort of walk us through what you did in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so I commissioned about 7 years ago as a second lieutenant. Once going through boot camp in Quantico, Virginia, you actually head straight back there for what the Marine Corps calls the basic school. So every Marine officer has to, regardless of MOS, regardless of specialty, has to attend the basic school where they become a provisional rifle platoon commander, provisional infantry officer. Some Marine officers from there, it's about a 6-month school, will then actually continue at the infantry officer course and get the more advanced knowledge. And others who don't, go get picked for their respective MOSs will go across the U.S. to whatever school they may, communications, armor, supply, whatever the case may be. So I went to Quantico. From there, got assigned to 3rd Assault Amphibian Battalion out in Camp Pendleton, California. Spent some time out in San Diego, which is not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Southern California has got some good training weather and some good leaving Liberty weather.
Yeah, sounds better than like Alaska or something.
Absolutely.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Or any place in Finland.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was an enjoyable place. I checked in. I became from there. I went to the Assault Amphibian Officers course and the Martial Arts Instructor course, and then after that, I became a platoon commander. I had about 45 Marines and 12 armored, the amphibious vehicles. Deployed once as a platoon commander with the 31st MU, which is out of Okinawa, Japan, predominantly doing a lot of force projection in the Asian Pacific region.
Also an interesting place in this time and age.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The other superpower, the one that's not Russia, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dealing with them a lot in the South China Sea, which if that isn't a hint, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're a lot of on ship, a lot of integrating with our U.S. Navy brethren, putting the vehicles on ship, doing a lot of exercises, Balakatan 17 at the time, which is in the Philippines, working with our Filipino partners. And it was mainly a lot of training exercises, nothing overly exciting there. And that was about 6 months. And then, came back, assumed the role of a company executive officer, had by this time become a first lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. And went on a second deployment. That one got a little bit more interesting. I ended up doing a couple individual augments, mainly in support of Operation Inherent Resolve, which is in a little bit more desert region of the world nowadays. Once I got done with that one, I actually came back and received orders to go back as a captain and be an instructor at the basic school where I had originally trained as a second lieutenant. So that was a privilege. I got a chance to, instruct and mentor young Marine officers, men and women who were in the same role or same boots as me 6 years prior, and really give them their initial introduction, not only to Marine Corps, but also leading some of the some of the best that America has to offer, our enlisted Marines and sailors. So that was a great experience. And around that time is when I decided to make the jump and attend Special Forces Assessment Selection down in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, an undisclosed piece of woods that's not hospitable to U.S. habitation, or I'm sorry, human habitation. But, so went through that, and that's currently where I'm at, made the transition, and now I'm part of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command.
Cool.
And am I right to say that that's what's it called? Operational Detachment Alpha?
Yep, that's what the teams are called, Operational Detachment Alphas. And as an officer, that makes me 18 Alpha Operational Detachment Commander. Right.
All right, awesome. That's why I'm doing this podcast, is saying these cool words.
It is. Immediately became more important.
Saying
things like
exactly.
that. Yeah, buzzwords.
Some people some people do cool things, and we just get to say cool things.
I was going to say our unit's motto is "Look good, do good." So we're still living up to that.
That's a motto of the childhood. Back when I was playing sports in high school, we used to say, "You look good, you play good." Right.
and there is some truth to it.
Absolutely.
So I couldn't help noticing, so you basically switched branches during your service. So just in general, is that something that's commonly done in the States?
No, I think that's for the most part uncommon.
All right.
I personally I didn't know anyone that had done it before. So much like anything in the military, it was just kind of forging my way through that path. And asking questions until someone gave me an answer that I wanted to hear. Right. No, it's fairly uncommon. I mean, it definitely does happen. And I think a lot of times you see individuals switching branches, particularly from something like the Marine Corps, which just because I switched does not mean, I'm not proud to be a Marine. It was a sort of great experience, and the Marine Corps challenged me in a lot of ways. But those who do make the switch, it's usually to join a more specialized community, to take that next step towards to challenge themselves physically, mentally as a leader. Right.
So.
Cool. I couldn't help also to notice that you did partake in Operation Inherent Resolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You didn't happen to have any run-ins with Finnish troops over there?
I did not. Actually, more Swedish and Norwegians than Finnish
Those guys
troops.
Are always everywhere.
Well, it's probably a good thing I didn't see you guys. It just means you're operating a little bit harder than everyone else, right?
True.
We'll say that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very comfortable with that answer.
Yeah.
All right. You said you haven't looked back since you joined the military. What's the best thing about serving?
Oh, the people, man. It's always the people that you serve with. I mean, and I think that is true across any military that you're a part of. I had what I thought were good friends in high school and growing up, but the people I keep in touch with, the people that are coming here for my wedding, for example, are all guys that I serve with. I mean, they become brothers and sisters. So, I originally joined out of a patriotic sense of duty and wanting to challenge myself, but what's kept me in is the people I've served with, not just the guys to my left and right, my peers, my friends, but also the Marines and soldiers I've had the opportunity to lead. I mean, they make me better every day. So definitely the people.
Awesome. I can actually relate to that as well, because we did our service before we went to college, because it's a mandatory military service. You got to do it. So, and I've just noticed that since we spent a few years in the Army, that the friends we did, or
friends we made
there, have just stuck with us more than the people we met in college or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend a lot more time with people during college. You can basically be in touch with people every single day during your stay in college and while you're studying, and go out partying and stuff like that. But those guys, they just don't know you the same way that somebody who you've served with does. Like it's a completely different kind of bond. Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I knew it's every military, right?
Yeah.
It transcends nationality.
Yeah.
I took 1 million pictures in college that I thought were hilarious, and we said we're legendary, and we'll relive this forever. And I can tell you those pictures are long gone. The ones I do have are things like me and my good friend Ben when we were in outside of Camp Fuji. I was just south of the mountain doing a live fire range. It was like 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's him and I asleep next to a heater, cradling a bag of Cheez-Its, right? Like those are the people I remember. Those are the photos I remember. So
Exactly. True.
Yeah, so to our Finnish listeners, 5 Fahrenheit is roughly minus 15 degrees Celsius. And I also think that many of our listeners can absolutely agree that the cold, dark woods where you're stuck spooning with a battle buddy in the tent in the heat of a fireplace, that does absolutely create bonds that do last a lifetime.
Yeah.
They're unbreakable.
Yeah.
Exactly. In good and in bad. All right. So what is it like to serve in the U.S. military?
Well, it's definitely an experience, right? It's not as I came up in the era when the Marine Corps is putting out commercials of the guy climbing a rock face and then fighting off a dragon with a Mameluke sword.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
I've seen that as well. That's legendary.
Yep.
We don't have stuff like that
Whoever
in Finland.
came up with that is
Oh yeah, it's very, very creative. I've yet to kill my dragon.
I was
for
just
all
about
the
to ask.
listeners. I
haven't slain any dragons yet.
I was searching for it in the Quantico woods. I couldn't find it. But,
you didn't look hard enough.
yeah, well,
do that and you'll become a major.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you get command of a battalion. You find your dragon. No, but I mean, I came up when those commercials were popular, and it does seem very sleek, very sexy. Obviously, for anyone who's served in the military, it's not always the case, right? It's not Call of Duty. It's not always action. There are, long periods of boring. But a lot of times when things are boring, when things are slow, that's when you can impact the most people around you. And I think what I appreciate the most about not just the Marine Corps, not just the, Special Forces, but the U.S. military as a whole is that you really have an opportunity to grow from those around you if you seek it out. There are a lot of tremendous people that are in the U.S. military, a lot of tremendous thinkers because of the relative prestige it has within the United States, that you truly can become a better person, morally, physically, intellectually, because of the people that are in the military. They're not all great, I'll admit, right? But if you spend some time, you can find some good people. So it really is kind of a special place that I think is replicated in very few countries around the world. And I do feel lucky, again, going back to the people, right, about those I've met, those I've been able to speak to, those I've been able to learn from. Plus with such a large budget, such a large amount of our GDP spent on training, we're always able to get out there to field, hone your skills. If you can handle that part physically, you can really kind of become the best at what you do. And that's what I appreciated, especially about the Green Berets is, there's plenty of time for fun, but we also make sure that we're the best at what we do.
True. I mean, it's a big ass machinery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're bound to have all kinds of people in there and you're bound to bump in some great people and maybe some not so great people.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to add just a quick tangent regarding like advertising of the military. I just think it's kind of funny because that doesn't really happen here in Finland, like at all. You do get like infomercials and stuff, especially nowadays. They do a lot of content for social media and stuff like that. So like the general perception of the military is more active in like I don't know, general society than it was still time ago, but like to the sense that what you have in the States, it's nothing like that, because while you get cool commercials with dragons and swords and stuff, we just get a letter in the mail saying, hey, get your ass over here, you're going in.
Right. Yeah, it's the law.
Yeah. Get over here or the cops will come and pick you up.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of interesting, right? Like I think the military has this level of, prestige or general respect, or at least probably required respect from the average U.S. citizen, I think sometimes. But because a lot of people, they don't have to participate in it. It's an all-volunteer force in the U.S., so it looks really good from afar, whereas in Finland, it's a lot more real for a lot more people.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said about that. I think there's probably a different type of respect for the military and the defense force in Finland than there is in the U.S. And I would say in some ways it's probably a more profound respect here than maybe some artificial respect that occurs in the U.S. for people who look at it from a distance.
Yeah, where you kind of have to remind people that we have this thing then.
Exactly.
Yeah. But still, I was really baffled. I don't know if I've told this story before in the podcast, but
now you're going to tell it in English. Go.
Yeah, no, at least I haven't done that. So after my deployment to Lebanon, I was visiting New York. We were at Madison Square Garden watching ice hockey. and I was about to purchase some beer over there, and I handed them my passport at the
Bar.
At the bar, yeah, that's the word. Handed them my passport at the bar. They were like, "Nah, sorry." Actually, no, it wasn't my passport because the passport was at the hotel. I had my Finnish driver's license. So they looked at it and was like, "Nah, this doesn't work. You need to give us your passport. Not happening." I was like, "Crap, that's at the hotel, but I really want my beer." So then I was like, "Shit, what can I do?" I had my United Nations ID with me. It already had a hole stamped through it, so like not valid anymore or anything. I was like, hey, I got my UN ID, and well, UN does have their headquarters over in New York as well. So I handed them my UN ID. He looked at it and was like, yeah, sure, you can get some beer here. Thank you for your service. And I was like, that would never happen.
Yeah, exactly. If I would show my UN ID here, they would, nobody would care.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, is it's nice to have that, that is part of American culture, is appreciation for the military, even foreign militaries that are here, because we work bilaterally, trilaterally, multilaterally, with so many different nations being who we are in the world. I think that is ingrained, but like I said, guy at the bar probably knows he should respect the military, but doesn't understand where that respect comes from. Where I think probably in Finland, there's an understanding among your average citizen because they've probably been touched by it, if not know someone who's touched by it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I think it's quite hard to find someone here who wouldn't have some kind of experiences with the military, or some close relatives who would have that. But you actually mentioned earlier that you were the first in your family to serve. How did your family take it?
Well, I should probably amend that statement. Not the first. My great grandfather he was a captain in the Army as well.
Right.
He was killed in World War II. He volunteered to be a doctor, and then came over and was killed in France. So that, other than that, I obviously never met him because I was born well after World War II. But I think that, other than him, who's so far removed from the modern generation, I'm the only member. It's funny, when I decided to join the Marine Corps, my parents and my family, biggest supporters of the U.S. military and the United States Marine Corps, and now the Green Berets of all time. When I decided to join, because my family was so unfamiliar, and like I was talking about, I just had no real connection with the military. I remember I told my mom, and I was like, hey, I'm joining the U.S. Navy. And she goes, oh, well, that's interesting. She's like, so you're going to be like on a ship? So once we broke that, I'm like, yeah, sort of.
Part of the time.
I know my parents. I had to break it to them soft. So my dad's like, all right, well, if you're going to do this, at least you should be on an aircraft carrier. I'm like, okay, well, I'm joining a department in the Navy. He's like, which department? I'm like, the United States Marine Corps Department. and for the next 5 nights, I think every night at dinner, my dad yelled at me every single night. I actually went back to Virginia Tech, and I promised them when I left I would change it over to go meet with the Navy guys and change over into the U.S. Navy. Not that there's anything wrong with the Navy. I do love my naval brethren, but by the time I got to Tech, I think I got to my dorm, dropped my bags, called my mom and said, hey, Mom, I'm not changing. I'm going to be a Marine. And so once they kind of got over that, they were not very receptive. But I think once they saw what it did for me, I think especially my father, once he saw, the maturity and the discipline and turn me into the man I am today, you won't find more ardent supporters. They love it. So,
right. Awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was just a rough beginning.
It always is. What's the most important thing that you've learned through your time in the military?
I think the most important thing is, in order to be a leader, and everyone in the military, down to the newest private, needs to be a leader. And in order to be a leader, you need to be able to connect with people. I found out very early on that, does it help to look like a G.I. Joe? Yeah, absolutely, right? If you can run 3 miles in 15 minutes and do 100 push-ups in one set, that's all well and good. It's great if you're the best shot. None of that really matters if you can't pull the best out of your people. That's just a fact. So I think being able to connect with people, being able to make those that you not only lead, but those that you serve with, let them know through not just what you say, but your actions, that you truly care for them, that you truly are there for them, is probably the most important thing, because if someone feels that you care for them, they'll run through a brick wall for you. And a lot of times that's exactly what I'm asking these kids to do. So I think the most important thing I learned is that everyone in the military needs to be a leader, and you need to do that. You need to be able to connect with people.
That's awesome advice.
That's really powerful and really universal.
Yeah, absolutely. Listeners, take out your notepads now.
Exactly. Write that stuff down.
Believe me, I bet you most of the listeners are smarter than me. So if I figured it out, they'll be able to do it too.
All right, let's talk Finland then.
Let's do it.
How familiar are you with the Finnish Defense Forces?
Well, I wasn't, I can tell you 2 years ago, I was not that familiar at all. However, since meeting my lovely wife, my knowledge of Finland has grown. And I wish, to be honest with you, I wish I had known more about the Finnish Defense Force and their history before I became a Marine, before I became an officer, because I think there's a ton that the Finnish Defense Force has done throughout history, dating back prior to World War II. I think there's a lot of lessons there that we can learn a lot from. So big fan of Simo Hauha.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I am aware of Larry Thorne. I don't know if it's safe to say I'm a fan, because he was an interesting character.
Yeah, he's been to places.
Absolutely.
Just put it that way.
Yeah.
Laurie Thorne.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But my knowledge in the past year or so has grown, even through contacts that I've met through my wife, friends that have served in the Finnish military. I've become more familiar with the Finnish Defense Force. And I'm happy about that.
Cool. Yeah. I think, is it just an unofficial motto, or just something that's been popularized by pop culture, but like there is the saying that Marines make do. And I think that's also very applicable to the Finnish Defense Forces in general.
Exactly.
Like we did that during the wars, and still to this day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do more with less.
Yeah.
Certainly something Marines take heart. And I think as I like we were talking before we sat down here, and as I've, been studying Finnish military history, I think you guys actually embody that motto probably more than the Marines do. So absolute respect there. But
Awesome. So yeah, for the international listeners who don't know who Simo Hauha or Larry Thorne are, we'll just quick run through. Simo Hauha, best sniper in the world.
Yeah, actually, like an even easier way is to listen to some Sabaton.
Yeah,
you'll
true.
figure it out.
Yeah, true. And Larry Thorne, originally a Finnish guy who fought in Finland during World War II, and then eventually, because of what happened after the war, had to go to the States. Ended up in. Was it the Green Berets or?
He was U.S. Army Special Forces.
Yeah. And first taught guerrilla tactics and stuff like that, because that's what he knew, and then ended up going to, what's it called?
Vietnam.
That and ended up going to airborne school, and then was killed in action in Vietnam.
Yeah, I believe he was killed in a helicopter crash. But at the time, they were operating as part of this. Whole nother thing we go into, but he was operating as part of SOG, Special Operations Group, but he was killed in a helicopter crash. Interesting one, because he got, not only was he a Mannerheim Cross recipient, he also went to sapper school in Germany, came back, ran into some trouble post-war, kind of stuck as an immigrant in Brooklyn, joined the U.S. Army because of the program with Vietnam ramping up, that they give you citizenship and everything like that if you join the Army. Got into the Army, said this is too easy, I'm going to go by Laurie Thorne, who now is Larry Thorne. Joins the U.S. Army Special Forces, and now actually not only is he buried in Arlington Cemetery as one of the only Finnish person, or the only person who's fought for Finland, Germany, and America.
3 armies.
But he also has, at one of the groups, has a courtyard named after him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So, which again is funny considering his past. But
Yeah. And by the way, Larry Thorne is a really badass name.
It is.
Yeah. So that he's an interesting guy. I think he's interesting. Simo Hauha is the pinnacle. Deadliest sniper in history.
Yeah.
What is it? 300-400 kills. Close second, Carlos Hathcock, the white feather. Give him a shout out, U.S. Marine. But yeah, I think, Simo, embodiment of toughness, half his face blown off and still snowing up the mountains and shooting Soviets.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
And he was just a farmer.
That's literally, yeah. He knew how to hunt. He knew how to shoot.
Yeah.
Then he just kind of twisted that to the army.
Yeah, it sounds like a Hollywood B movie script. Yeah, I can't believe it's real.
What's he called? Like Steven Seagal could play him, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe John Cena.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit more modern take, maybe.
Especially since the dude was like, I don't even know how to translate that to lengths that Americans would know it, but I think he was like 170 centimeters long.
Yeah, well, short.
Short, yeah. We're just gonna say short.
Yeah, he was
short.
like 5'5". Yeah, I think is what it was.
Small target.
5'5".
Yeah, exactly, small target. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, we kind of asked you about this already, but have you ever had the opportunity to work with Finnish troops?
Unfortunately not. Most of my, especially having been stationed during my time abroad, out of Camp Pendleton, is primarily Asian Middle East focused. You run into a lot of Marines out of the East Coast, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune area. They do what they call the Black Sea Rotational Force, which does a lot of the NATO exercises, Sweden, Norway, and more increasingly Finland.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity. My experience with the Finnish Defense Force has been limited the past 2 years out of my own research and
our Instagram page.
Yeah, Mighty Finland's Instagram page into the comments section. I'm very lively. But I do know a number of Marines who have, and it's primarily through that Black Sea Rotation Force. It's primarily through those overseas exercises, like Trident Junction, and everything like that, where it's a lot of Nordic defense pact nations running bilateral exercises.
Yeah. And those are becoming a bigger and bigger thing every year.
Absolutely. And it's really awesome to see Finland participate in more and more. I think last year's, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, last year's had the biggest Finnish contribution yet. So
yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
Have you had Arctic training somewhere else?
I have. So we have the illustrious Bridgeport, California, the Mountain Warfare Training Center,
right.
MWTC. And there they have Winter Mountains Leaders Course, which in the right lights might look like the Laplands at certain times of the year.
I was going to say California doesn't sound like winter. Not when I've been there.
Yeah. Southern California, certainly not. But this is up closer to the north, actually in up in the mountain ranges up there that kind of run through Nevada and into Washington and Oregon. And it gets pretty cold. For example, one of the landing zones is LZ Penguin. That's where we slept most of the time. Right. So that gives you any idea of how cold it was.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. But we did a number of things, a lot of skiing, like, snow ski inserts, how to operate in that type of terrain. We did do the you fall in frozen water. I know you guys do that for fun here, jump into frozen lakes. We did it for training to toughen up. So, but yeah, I have done some of that in Northern California. The Marine Corps does have the Mountain Warfare Training Center, and it's phenomenal training. They actually got a pack mule course out of there that I've always wanted to go to, but fortunately.
Cool. Yeah, that we don't have here in Finland. Not even at the Arctic training facilities.
Yeah.
Because I was asking because to my knowledge, Finnish troops do train a certain amount of U.S. servicemen each year up north.
Yeah, and I know the Marines participate in that. There's a lot of Marines that go through that. And again, a lot of those guys are out of Camp Lejeune, and the guys from the group that do participate are typically 10th group guys that focus on this region. So yeah.
They've planned it so that it's, even with changing weather patterns, it just happens to be every year at exactly the coldest time of the year. So
it's funny how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Training areas become available at right times when it's raining.
But yeah, actually, it's better if it's colder because it's not as wet.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah, so
like around 0 Celsius. I don't know what's that in Fahrenheit, but like just at the melting point. That's when things get tricky.
The worst. That's
yeah, because it starts to slush up.
Yeah,
it's in your boots. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Even Gore-Tex can't stop that.
Exactly.
Nope. I want a good snow because then I can put it in my mouth. I'm always concerned if the Soviets can see my breath. So learn that from SEMO.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like we've just received so many pictures over the years of people like setting up their tents, going to sleep, waking up in the middle of the night to having like 10 centimeters of water inside their tents and everything just completely wet. You're fucked at that point.
Yeah, and it is funny because those are the type of environments where having a tent can be almost more detrimental than not. I've found the times we have taken tents out, it gets flooded. I end up waking up in more of a puddle than if I just slept on the ground. So I've foregone the tent life. I always made my Marines forego the tent life, which originally they were very upset about. It was not a popular leader for that decision. But it makes sense in the end because of things like that.
Yeah.
So.
And that's also why our service weapon is based on the AK, so you can use it even though you pull it out of a puddle.
Yeah, there you go.
And you let it freeze over and over and over.
Yeah, exactly. And you gotta be able to use it as like a baseball bat and a crowbar and everything like that.
Yeah, don't tell that to a Marine PFC. He'd be like, I don't have to clean my M4 now.
Yeah, whenever you guys want to change your service weapon to ours, just let us know. It's heavy as fuck. And
I don't know if our military industrial complex will let us do that.
Yeah, there might be issues there.
Yeah. The acquisitions will get a little rough.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, we have a lot of, especially in the special operations community, obviously we use a variety of outside the standard conventional U.S. weapons. We have a ton of HK. The 18 Bravos on an ODA are well-versed in all foreign weapons, and you find a lot of times, you look back at 2002 in Afghanistan, the ODAs that inserted and linked up with the Northern Alliance in order to take down Afghanistan right after 9/11. I mean, those guys were using AKs, PKMs, Dishkas, things like that. So it's something we keep up to date on those weapon systems for sure.
Those weapon systems are basically those we have in general use today.
Yeah, exactly. The nice thing about those is that they're fairly intuitive.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That they are. Yeah. So on some, the instructions I think are even in Russian.
Exactly. But it's, there's not much that you have to learn there.
No.
Yeah, you're just speaking the language of the enemy.
Yeah, it's like PKM. It's just like if you know how to work your AK, you know how to work your PKM. It's just a bit bigger.
Yeah.
Yep. There's something to be said about that, right?
Yeah.
As long as you employ your weapon system effectively, who cares what type of rifle it is?
Precisely.
Just put them rounds on target.
And one big thing here in Finland is also the fact that when we are a conscription-based military, the stuff really needs to be as simple as possible in order to, first of all, be simple enough for somebody to use effectively, even if they just serve for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And secondly, they also have to be so durable that they actually last literally from father to son and even grandson after that. So
and I think that's critically important, especially when you're talking about a conscription force like the Finnish Defense Forces. Each soldier, even if it may be the one time that they're going to do it, they need to be good at it. That's what's made Finland successful in the past. I mean, I loved one of my favorite things that my wife introduced me to was Finland's participation, obviously, in the Winter War and the Continuation War, and the tactics that were employed against a larger force. I mean, really, you boil it down, what made Finland successful in those conflicts from being completely overrun and being a Soviet bloc state was that even the Finnish conscripts, the Simos, the farmers, right?
Yeah.
Each one of them was worth at least 4 or 5 soldiers because of their training, because of their mentality. So having a weapon system that allows for universal capability and just allows for quicker training of a quality soldier, I think it's extremely important for the Finnish Defense Force.
Absolutely. Just a side note, have you watched the Tuntematon Sotilas movies or the TV show?
I have not watched the TV show. I watched a whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's basically the same one. If it's the one that came out, was it a couple of years ago?
Yeah,
fairly modern. Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, I have.
Yeah.
I'm getting the nod that I have.
Yeah,
yes.
because the TV show is basically the movie, but split into is it 4 or 5 episodes, which are
something like that.
All of them. It's basically like the director's cut.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the main character, the older guy, but he was also a Finnish farmer. He used a PPSH to mow down.
Rokka.
Rokka. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that movie. That was fun. Plus, that was my introduction to Finnish, so I was trying to...
And that's essentially your life from now on until eternity, December 6th.
Yeah.
When it's our Independence Day.
Yep.
That's the thing we do. We watch that movie and be proud as fuck.
Yep. Actually, one of the first big events that my wife and I went to together was the Finnish Independence Day Gala at the Finnish Embassy in D.C.
Right, yeah.
So I wore my Marine uniform, and she was there, and we took a picture next to the U.S. flag and Finnish flag, and sent that to my parents. I said, I'm out kicking my covers. My wife's way hotter than me.
Awesome.
That's great.
Another tangent here. We were talking about weapon systems. This is like a very niche question, but what's your go-to weapon system? like favorite of all time? You can say something else than the Finnish Valmet.
To be honest, if I had to choose, now are we talking about man portable or just anything I can employ? What's the parameters here?
Just anything.
M2 Browning 50 cal, man.
Yeah.
M2 Browning 50 cal. Yeah, the Deuce, the Mod Deuce.
Yeah. We've also had some experience with those. Yeah.
It's just so. I mean, that the design of that machine gun or heavy machine gun has not changed since 1952. I think we tried to introduce the M2A2, which you didn't have the headspace and time. I want the original. Well, headspace and time. It builds a little discipline, and it's just such a functioning weapon. I mean. Yeah, it's heavy. You're not necessarily going to be able to, you're not running gun. It's not 240 Bravo, which is probably a close second. I do like that medium machine gun, but the 50 cal just puts such devastation downrange so accurately and so reliable. I made a career on that guy. So
awesome. Yeah, we actually during our conscription service, we got to handle those weapons as well. So we have some experience regarding those. To add to the conversation about keeping your guns simple and easy to assemble didn't really apply there, I would say.
I'm just happy. The gunner in my APC was happy to know everything about that gun because I was like, I cannot understand what's going on here. You're pulling out these small things out of it, and I'm like, what is happening here? Yeah, compared to the Soviet version, what's it called? Like whatever the sort of anti-air gun they got.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we saw the Dishka 50 cal was a lot of times was a Soviet style heavy machine gun that we ran into. And then you get to your PKM is the medium, but yeah, I think that was, and the reason I say about this is I probably wouldn't have said that, if we're talking to me 7 years ago, young second lieutenant Bo. The only reason I say that is, one of the things we talked about, like getting to know your people, make sure you care about. One of the things I did is I went down when my Marines were doing maintenance on the vehicles and doing maintenance on the weapons or something. I just found the most junior Marine I could, and I was like, hey, walk me through this weapon system. It just happened to be the 50 cal, and this kid, his eyes lit up like, Lieutenant's asking me to do something. This is crazy. So I went down and he showed me the whole thing, and little did he know, I did it just to kind of connect with him. Little did he know, he taught me a whole bunch, and I realized the simplicity, I realized the reliability, and it went into my planning, future operations. I always start, if we were laying down a base of fire, it always started with an accurate burst out of the 50 cal. And that would allow us to gain range at, we could range and prioritize targets with effects on the target, and then move, put weapons in like the Mark 19 grenade launcher, things like that. They're a little bit more complex to employ. So, that young PFC showing me a weapon system not only made it my favorite, but he impacted my planning. Yeah. So, going back to the original thing, you learn anything from anybody.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great listen there.
Yeah, exactly. I hope he's listening.
Yeah. Shout out to that guy.
Yeah, good kid.
All right. So, like we said, it's a conscription-based army or military, and military service is compulsory for all males. And sort of the term military-aged male kind of fits in well there.
Yeah.
I know,
the classic descriptor.
Yeah. I only know that from Hollywood, but
generation kill.
Exactly. So technically once you turn 18, you get this letter saying, you're going into the military, but you don't technically have to do it. There's also a civil service that you can do, but it just, you'll get more out of the military. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
And just to add to that, to just describe the level of commitment to the whole thing is that, or how committed the entire society is to this system, is that if you opt out from the military and you don't want to do the civil service either, you can actually opt for basically going to jail for is it a year?
I think it's the same. Yeah.
You can you'll opt into jail.
Yeah. I mean, you'll spend a year somewhere, whether it's in the military, in some sort of civil service, or in.
But you're not staying in charge of yourself. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's a great thing for young guys, because it's like, instead of going from high school directly to college, and it's instead of being in that pipeline the whole time, you kind of get dragged out of it and you learn these real world things.
Yeah.
Or not even technically real world, but
I think there's definitely probably some value to that. You probably find some proponents of a similar system, proponents of that type of system in the U.S. for sure. I'm not sure if it's doable, but I think there definitely is some value to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So due to this system, Finland has the largest reserves in Northern Europe, if not
at least for the Northern Europe.
For Northern
Europe,
Europe,
that we can say fairly accurately, at least.
Yeah. And so that means 280,000 combatants with a wartime placement. And all in all, there's 900,000 guys and gals who are in the reserves and could be called up in a time of crisis. And you got to compare that to our population of 5.6 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quite a high number.
Yeah.
Not doing the math here now, but that's a high number.
Yep.
Yeah, and the whole point of it is to just this term of true production. So you get assigned a certain wartime role in the military, and should there be a conflict, you're going to fill that role. You're the machine gunner of that and that squad, and then
I mean, there's like that doesn't even like. That doesn't affect the effectivity of the troops too much. Just like this personal experience, a couple of years back, I had started after finishing my military service after my deployment. I was like in the deep reserves, you could say, for a couple of years. Didn't like have anything to do with the military. Basically, I think I went on like one voluntary refresher or something like that. When we got called for this like official refresher, it was part of this bigger exercise, which was actually the first time that the US brought their Abrams over here. So we had Marines. Yeah, we had Marines with Abrams going toe to toe with our guys, and like
and I think LAVs as well.
Yeah, LAVs as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So like not to toot our own horn, but like. It didn't go as bad as one might think.
Yeah.
Put Marines and then the U.S. Army against a bunch of Finnish reservists.
I don't think it's the first time Finland said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's how do you say this? You enter into service twice a year, or there's entry to service twice a year, once in the summer and once in the winter, and then. It's either 6, 9, or 12 months that it takes.
Sure.
Either it's like a 6-month, very basic rifleman kind of thing, or then you go into some leadership role and then you're there for a year.
Yeah, and if you stay for 9 months, you have like these rifleman positions, but with a bit more specialization. So if you're like a medic or a military police or stuff like that, then you might stay there for 9 months or so. Actually, how is the system in the States? Is it like every branch has their own times when people enter the service, or is it just like continuous? How often do courses start?
So one, a little known fact, the U.S. does have we call it selective service. So at 18, if you are a male at 18 years old, you have to register for selective service. You have to register for the draft, which has been enacted twice, World War II and Vietnam. So every, military age male, to use the common, rules of engagement term, does have to legally have to sign themselves up in order to apply for college and everything. You have to show that you've signed up for the selective service. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we do have that. We don't require the training, but if we ever were to call a draft, people could get drafted. Outside of that, you have to have graduated high school. You have to have your GED, as we call it, a high school diploma, in order to enlist. And you can enlist right out of high school at 18, or you can get a waiver. Some people have enlisted and joined the military, all branches, at 17. If you want to be an officer, you need to attain a college degree. You need to have at least a bachelor's degree in order to be an officer in the United States military. And that's pretty much across the board for all the branches. There's usually very little delineation, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but you can enlist and then become an officer, but that'll take a couple of years and you still need to get that degree. So 18, you can join up, but again, it's all volunteer force. And once you join, usually once you've gone through whatever branch, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, you'll go through their boot camp, and your contract, you'll be assigned what we call an MOS, military occupational specialty. And then after boot camp, you'll go to that specialized school and then to your first unit. So
right.
How long do people usually serve, like just across the board?
your first contract, officer and enlisted, is typically going to be 4 years. So you hear a lot of people in the U.S. military, you say, I'm gonna do 4 and out. So 4 years is usually the first contract term, and that's when people either choose to re-enlist, or if you're an officer, career designate and continue your career. But yeah, if you see someone who said they did 4 years in the military, in the U.S. military, it means they just did 1 tour of service and then got out.
And compare that to our system, then within, say, that 1 year or the 12 months that you're going to do, since it's not exactly 1 year anymore because they had to do budget cuts. And
347 days, I think is accurate.
So they took 15 days off at the end just to save a little bit of money.
That's good.
Yeah.
Priorities.
Yeah. And they actually, because of that, because it starts with basic training, which used to be back in the day when I was in the Army.
Oh, yeah. That's something you hear a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, yours was harder than the guys going through now. Right? Yeah. They've ruined it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, back then basic training was 8 weeks, and now it's 9 weeks. So it's a fairly, quick thing, learning how to be a soldier, spending a little bit of time on the parade ground, doing that stuff, and then just learning to shoot, fire maneuver, very basic.
Small unit tactics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then from then on, the best, usually the best go into sort of the leadership. So NCO school sort of, NCO school would be the right term. Or then like these specialized schools like an engineer or medics or stuff like that. NCO school lasts then, I'm going to go ahead and say 4 months-ish. 3 to 4
Roughly,
months.
Yeah. Can't be that much off.
Yeah, exactly. With my math.
Yeah. And during NCO school, then from there, guys who go to the reserve officer school are also picked during the first half of the NCO school.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 2 halves, and then the best of the NCO school at the end of the first phase go on to become reserve officers then.
Okay.
And then they go to their school. And so essentially, once you're done with the
NCO school?
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with a different word for it, just to mix it up a bit. Anyway, once you're done with your
professional military education.
Yeah. So once you're done with the NCO school or the officer training, you then come back and train sort of the next. So if you started your service in the summer, you're going to be then the guys instructing the people who come in the winter. And then for you, the rest of the, say, 5 to 6 months, it's like unit level training. Then you learn to be the squad leader and or be a platoon leader and do that kind of stuff. And then
to jump back to your service and how you started, if I understood correctly, it was like you already knew once you joined that you were going to be an officer at that point.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's like different here. Well, some people do know that they are highly motivated and they want to go to the reserve officer school, but like nobody can be absolutely certain when they start that that's where they're going. They then have to also perform well during their service in order to get in there.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that you don't need to perform well to get there, but
no, they certainly took a gamble on me. I'm not sure me at 21 was ready to be an officer. I probably should have had some enlisted time, but no, I think there's definitely some merits to that, because I can tell you there's plenty of officers in the U.S. military that probably shouldn't be officers, right? If we're going to call a spade. So I think a competitive process through the basic training, starting with a larger pull down, I think there's some merits to that. I think Finland might be doing something right there. I think you're probably getting some guys that have shown that they can perform. I think that the difference is, and the reason that that's just not possible over in the U.S. is we are, as a professional military that's full time, 1 point whatever million personnel across all the branches. We have so many roles to fill. We need such a variety of people. Yeah. It's just bigger and it's just more active. Perfect world. I wish we could do it the way you guys did, because I think there'd be less guys in the officer ranks that probably shouldn't be in the officer ranks.
But yeah, that happens with our military as well.
I think that's quite universal, unfortunately.
Yeah, you can make the vetting process as hard as can be. The Green Berets do a really good job vetting people, personality wise, physically, everything. and yet you still see in the news guys messing it up for everyone, right?
Yep.
So there'll always be those people.
Yeah.
Some always slip through the cracks.
Yeah, and dang cracks.
But yeah, all of this in Finland boils back to our sort of geopolitically awkward position, sort of.
To say the least.
Yeah, exactly. To put it like politically correct.
Why? Who are you guys next to?
Sweden.
Yeah. Well, luckily they're not as good as hockey.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah. Sweden is not the reason we have our military set up this way. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, but we don't actually even talk about like countries when we do exercises or stuff like that. There are these like code words. The enemy is always called like something like yellow A2 or something like this,
and then they just happen to always attack from the east.
Yeah,
yeah,
for whatever
always
reason.
attack.
Yeah.
I know. When we were doing, we did an exercise out in 29 Palms, which is this big desert training area. In California, and it was a month-long exercise, and there was no one could bring cell phones or anything like that. It was a near-peer enemy that resides on a peninsula surrounded by water and is in vicinity of South Korea and is named the Marines. And I was like,
we could have just
I'm like, come on, guys, why don't we just say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this story about like some exercise where they were looking at the maps and talking about how the enemy is coming from the east and like how to plan accordingly. And then one guy goes and asks, what if they come from the south? Then the guy running a meeting is like looking at the map for a second, and then he's like, yeah, you mean if they hook around us? So like, yeah, there is something to that mentality.
Yeah.
I think that Coffee or Die video, they did a really good video of Sabre Junction.
Yeah.
That we had taken a look at.
Yeah.
And in one of the briefings, where the Air Force guys like, they're coming from the east, so use your imagination.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
that is a great video, by the way.
It is.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, I watched it last night, so it was pretty good.
That's how I imagine life as a Green Beret is. Chilling in your flannels and, having your Gucci gear on.
The cameras are always away from our face.
Yeah.
Everyone else had a name and got the broadcaster name tape, and then all of a sudden the Green Beret show that just says Team Sergeant, and you see the back of his head. That's about right.
Yeah.
Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Varusteleka, for making this podcast possible. Varusteleka has a huge selection of military and outdoor equipment for even the most acquired tastes. Go check them out. Link in bio. How is it over there in the US military? Is it a lot of waiting around? Is it just all action all the time?
Yeah, I mean,
kicking down doors.
I wish, man. Believe me. No, I mean it's all plenty. There's more boredom than there is action for sure. And usually, once the action starts, you're excited for a little bit, and then the action goes for 5 days, and you're like, "Please make it boring."
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't slept.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's definitely boring, and as we globally wind down conventional operations, I think as a whole, you're going to see a lot more peacetime training focuses, which some people are for and some people aren't for, right? Larry Thorne, man of action, probably not happy with the peacetime U.S. military, and there are guys that are still like that. So I would say military life is not like Call of Duty.
What?
We're not dropping into Verdansk every other day. It is certainly a lot of boring, but the boring part, what you do with those boring periods, determines how successful you are in those moments of action. We always joke there's other, among Green Berets, there's other communities within Special Operations Forces that are named after certain aquatic animals that they'll, throw together a plan on a napkin and then go kick a door down. Whereas in the Green Berets, we'll lock ourselves in we call it the ISOFAC, the isolation facility, for 2 weeks prior to an operation. No contact with the outside world, purely sleeping, eating, and planning to make sure that every contingency and everything has been thought through. And that is excruciatingly boring. But it's also the reason we've been successful in so many operations. And that's the things a lot of people don't see. That's the work that goes into it. And that's where the boredom comes from,
Yeah.
But
True. There's a saying in Finland, or I think it was some general who said it, that the most dangerous soldier is a bored soldier. It's usually meant in that way, where you got to have something to do for, you can't let them just run around. You got to have something for them to do, or to train or something.
I wish I could tell you that throughout my professional military career, in those moments of boredom, especially out in the field, that I've always been trying to better myself or read a book. Most of the time I've eaten 15 Twizzlers and then went to the bathroom 4 times. And, your standard story, it doesn't change across nationalities. You guys
relatable.
Throw rocks into a helmet, so you're going to get the most. Same stuff.
Yeah. I think, do we still have some more questions regarding the Finnish military, or do we want to go through this? Or
I'm just going to add just the idea of that in Finland is what's actually interesting is that there's very little emphasis on like class background or anything like this. So especially when you look at maybe militaries in Central Europe or other Western European militaries, they would shit themselves when they hear that within a certain time in a unit, I could, as an NCO, just be on first name basis with other officers, like even high ranking officers, and I think that comes back to everybody started at like the same boot camp essentially.
Yeah, and there is something to be said. Like you look at it, special operations teams in the U.S. There's a lot less of the hierarchical hierarchy structure of the ranks, and a lot more of an intimate relationship between the individual and the team, because it becomes like a mini family. I think in your standard conventional forces in the U.S. military, there is still the desire and I would argue the need for the delineation between officer and enlisted within an appropriate amount. Have I gone out and had too many beers with a few of my sergeants? Absolutely. I've always had a more relaxed approach to leadership anyways, dating back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation. But, in the end, it would be too much if they called me by my first name while at work or while in the because I needed them professionally, not just for the junior Marines, but also so that I knew that if I gave an order in a situation that had, that may or may not have dire consequences, there wasn't questioning going on. There wasn't that line of decision maker and executor being broken because those precious seconds that were lost because we don't have the discipline of rank can lead to someone getting killed. Right?
Exactly.
And I guess that's also something that is a lot more prevalent over there due to the fact that you actually have active conflicts that you are actively as a military participating in. Of course, we also have that in a sense, participating in peacekeeping missions and our SOF units doing whatever they do behind the curtains. But like on the general level, which almost everybody experiences, there's just like it's not as real for us than it maybe is for you guys. Yeah.
Yep. And I thought there's actually going back to that the Finnish war movie we were talking about earlier. I remember specifically there's one scene where I think they had pulled back from the front and the officers were drinking in a cabin and the enlisted guys were out drinking around a campfire. And I think two of the enlisted guys wander into the officer's cabin, start getting, everyone's drunk. They think they can say what they want. It turns into a little bit of a scuffle, right? Yeah. Officers kind of look like douchebags. I don't know if it's okay language. All right, officer
out of this podcast.
Officer kind of looks like an asshole in the movie, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure. I'd react any differently because if once that line is breached, if it is not quickly reset, it could have issues when that officer has to deliver an order in combat.
Yeah. And that's exactly or one of the themes that exact movie sort of revolves around. Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about our military before we go into the really interesting stuff that we're going to ask you is that it's a crazy idea or it's a fun idea or whatever that sort of our fifth-ish of our population is trained by the military and knows how to function as a soldier. I think it's a crazy and fun idea, and I think the sole purpose of that, like we said, with the being in a geopolitically awkward place is just to send a message of like, don't fuck with us.
Hey, I'm good with that message. I like it.
And just to add to that, it's kind of this cool, unique thing that it does connect, or it's like closes the gap between generations, basically, because like we've been there our kids probably are going there. Our parents, our fathers have been there, and their fathers before them, and like it's this like cross-generational thing with the military. Everybody has a story from there, and everybody has their quite similar experience that we can then together share and like compare. For example, in the sauna.
Exactly.
That's one place where those conversations come in. Yeah.
I think from an outsider's perspective, the Finnish Defense Force, from its history, 1/5 being trained, has something special, and I think you guys have a word for it, sisu.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing, again, from an outsider's perspective, that the Finnish military can do going forward, particularly with its conscripts and its reserve forces, is continue to embed that mentality. Even if it's only a short 6-month training block, that mentality needs to be instilled, and it needs to be kept alive on the conscript, because it's all well and good to have the biggest reserve force in Europe. But, in 1939, the Russians had the biggest army in Europe, and you guys handed them their ass at the Mannerheim line, right? Why did that happen? It's because each individual Finnish soldier was a more proficient fighter than your average Soviet soldier was. And I think as long as you all maintain that mindset, the numbers are great. That's far more important.
Yeah, true.
Well said.
Exactly. All right, let's talk pipe hitters. All right, so tell us, how does one become a Green Beret? Sort of, what's the training like, or the selection? Let's start with that.
Sure. So Special Force Assessment Selection is only one phase of the Special Forces Qualification Course, SFQC, as they call it. It's actually phase 1. So Special Forces Assessment Selection, more affectionately known as SFAS or SFAS, is a 3-week, it used to be 2, it's now a 3-week school with about 19 training days and a couple admin days on the back end once you've been selected. And they're fairly physical, I think is a safe way of putting it. It's just a lot of, unknowns selected to continue your training as a Special Forces soldier. I think that's where a number in the whole length of the Special Forces Qualification course and most of the cuts occur. We had about 450 people start my course that I attended, and they ended up selecting about 65 of us. 65 officers, and about 8 of us were selected. So pretty, 75 to 80% of people don't make the cut. And if you are selected, that's simply just, hey, you can continue your training. And after that, you enter phase 2. If you're an officer, chances are you'll go to your career school, Army, Special Operating Forces, Captain's Career Course. The enlisted guys will, start their admin changeover, and then you'll head into MOS school. So MOS, Military Occupational Specialty. Officers are hitting 18 Alpha, which is the team commander course. A lot of mission planning, how to build foreign internal defense, coordinate with local leaders, things like that. A lot of charismatic type things, as well as military mission planning. And the enlisted guys will go to their respective course, which can either be 18 Bravo, which is weapons sergeant, communications, or engineering. Similarly, there's also in an ODA, there's also bilateral billet of intelligence specialists, as well as the senior team sergeant and a warrant officer if you're lucky. That kind of makes it a 12-man team. But they'll go to the MOS school. They'll learn a lot of cool things. So the weapons sergeant gets to deal with every gun under the sun. They're going to be your foreign weapons specialist. Communication guys are going to work the vast array of satellite, HF, VHF, UHF types of communications and what they can do in austere environments. Your 18 Delta is going to be your medic. That is probably the most intensive MOS school. I mean, it's almost a year long, just MOS alone, whereas the other ones are 6 to 14 weeks. And that's because they essentially become a field trauma surgeon, where they can perform tracheotomies, just about anything that a team would need medically, in a evacuation denied environment. So those guys become extremely talented, essentially the level of a physician's assistant, almost medical doctor, as well as the engineer, which specializes not in just building things, but also knocking them down very quickly and very loudly. And so that once MOS school is done, they move into phase 3, which is the tactical skills, or TAC skills as it's better known. That's going to start off with SEER, your survival, evasion, rescue school, where they're going to teach you how to not only survive off the land, but also, evade forces should you be behind enemy lines and start to be chased. And once you are caught, how to exercise patience as a POW.
Yeah, we kind of did that. We had a PowerPoint presentation, so we know.
Oh yeah,
we did what's called, is it A level, where it's literally just presentations about
just a presentation,
yeah.
and what to carry in a backpack.
Yeah. I wish I could say the presentation does it justice, but till you've been shoved in a 5 foot by 5 foot box and someone lets you go to the bathroom in a pail for 5 days. But it's important, right? Because it gives you, they do a very phenomenal job recreating what it would be like in a POW camp, down to physical contact, right? Violent physical contact. Within a controlled environment, the instructors there are extremely professional, and it's some of the best training you can get. It also sucks. So you'll do that for 3 weeks, and then after that, you're placed into teams. So everyone has been through MOS school at this point, plus SEER. They'll actually build training qualification course ODAs. And you'll operate as an ODA for about a month or so, going through tactical skills, doing direct action rage, doing linked up, practicing all the missions of a Green Beret, culminating in the final event, Robin Sage, which is an extended period. It can vary how extended it is. An extended period where you actually insert what they call Pineland, is a location in North Carolina, with actual role players, and you go in there, link up with a resistance movement, and actually build a resistance force in pursuit of their goals and U.S. goals in the nation of Pineland. And once you pass that, you and the rest of your team will, successful completion of Robin Sage earns you the Green Beret, the coveted Green Beret. You get to put that on, and then you move to the last phase of the qualification course, which is language training. And usually that language is assigned by the group that you're sent to. So each group has its own region of the world. For you all, 10th group being the most pertinent in Europe. And you'll likely get a language of the group, of the area that the group is. So, you get assigned Russian, you're going to 10th group, you get assigned Spanish. Chances are you're heading towards the Latin America area, 7th group, and all that out of MacDill. So once you complete the language, which can vary between 16 and 24 months, you'll move to your active duty group. And they'll probably stick you on a team. It's time to do the real deal. Time to pipe hit, officially call it. But yeah, so the pipeline can be pretty extended, especially if you're an 18 Delta medical. We're usually looking at about a year of training before you actually get to start doing some time with the teams.
Damn, yeah, that was an extensive explanation of how it goes. Awesome.
That was awesome. So it sounds like physical fitness is important, but also your personality is weighted and emphasized, and sort of being able to think.
Yeah, and also the ability to tolerate the unknown, I would say, probably.
Yeah, I think those are probably two of the biggest elements. I mean, I can tell you, I went to selection with some guys that were animals, left me in the dust and didn't get selected. You never know the reason why. If you aren't selected at selection, why you didn't get picked. They don't really ever give you a good reason. They just give you a time that you can come back. But a lot of times it has to do with either, you're unable, you simply don't fit the mold, which the mold in this case is someone who can blend in and maintain interpersonal relationships, or you just don't have the personality to accomplish the mission. We're talking about the mission of a Green Beret being able to embed with an indigenous force or a local national military and build them up and train them. And that requires rapport, that requires, interpersonal relationships. And if you're not able to do that, you can't be a Green Beret. Along the same note, teams are, you're going to be, it might just be you and 11 other Americans and God knows where. If you suck, you're not going to help the team, because I'm sure we've all served with someone who we just don't get along with, and it can really piss you off the more tired you get. So that there is a level of that too.
Yeah, the group dynamics are quite important.
Absolutely, especially at small team level.
Yeah.
One more for the road. We just want to thank Protection Group Denmark for making this podcast possible. Protection Group Denmark produces high-quality ballistic equipment that we trust out in the field. Check them out. By now, you should know where to find the link.
So I would say we quite extensively already covered what Green Berets do. But I think like most of our listeners, at least here in Finland, are most knowledgeable regarding Navy SEALs, maybe,
Sure.
and then like have heard about Green Berets and also Rangers, Delta Force, stuff like this. So could you just like shortly explain the main differences between these different SOF units?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is just kind of a down and dirty as to what the special forces do for the U.S. military, and it's not as sexy as direct action raids. The SEALs get to participate in more the commando the SEALs get to be. This is, I was drawn to the Green Berets because they are the quiet professionals. It is intensive planning in small teams, embedding in a local national military or indigenous force in order to enact guerrilla warfare and help build foreign internal defense once the violent execution of objectives are met. And what I mean by that is it's not just, hey, I'm going to embed with these locals and launch a guerrilla offensive against this structured military, right? It's once we have overcome our enemy, how can we then provide these local nationals with the blueprints to establishing a structured environment for their country to then prosper? I think one of the most interesting things about the Green Berets is that they're soldier diplomats. You look at it, like we talked about earlier, look at Afghanistan. Once they did topple the Taliban, they were linked up to Northern Alliance, and they did topple the Taliban in northern Afghanistan. A lot of those Green Berets immediately became governors of the city they were closest to, right? And have worked with a counterpart. So Green Berets differ from Navy SEALs in that our job may not be as sexy, but I think it provides one of the most critical skills and mentalities that you can have in an asymmetric world that we live in now.
So there's an element of like strategy there, especially because it's not just direct action. So you gotta like think on a higher level.
Absolutely, yeah. Every special forces soldier, not just the officer, has to be able to think at the strategic higher level. It's a lot of fun just to be tactical, and like we talked about earlier, I'd love to be a trigger man and a door kicker nonstop. But in the end, that doesn't provide the level of security that we need as the United States, that Finland needs, that the Baltic nations need against larger superpowers. What does is countries surrounding, your near peer threats that are structured and allies. The more, our fact of the matter is that our competitors in today's space thrive when there is dysfunction among countries that are near us. If we are able to insert ourselves into those nations and teach them not only how to defend themselves, but govern themselves, that's the best thing we can do. And that's exactly what Green Berets are meant for.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned this whole peer-to-peer thing, given that, there's this power struggle in the world with US and China and, Russia trying to do their thing there, and there's this change, especially in larger militaries, where you guys and other militaries have been in these counterinsurgency operations a lot. So, and I've read about this a lot, like on this whole sort of Pentagon level.
Sure.
What does the military have to do now that there's this power shift? But what does this mean to like a single operator or like smaller unit? Does it mean you have to like learn new skills? Is it relearning something you learned like way back when, or is it just like a mental shift now?
Yeah, I think there is a shift that needs to occur. We have in the U.S. we are not very good about forward thinking. We've been for the past since World War II, we've been. Every conflict we get into, we've been fighting initially with the tactics we fought with in the last one, right? I think what is critically important now is that we recognize that the world now fights unconventionally. We face enemies that thrive in an unconventional warfare environment, and we need to be able to do the same. I think, and I know it's a touchy subject. I'm certainly not taking a stance here one way or another. But if you look at Israel's recent use of the media recent use of the media in order to draw out Hamas fighters by putting out that there was going to be an invasion when there really wasn't, and then watching where those people moved to and then bombing those locations. That is, no matter what side of the fence you fall on that conflict, that is phenomenal use of unconventional warfare. They recognized the media was a tool to draw out an enemy that typically was able to blend into civilian populations. That type of mentality, that type of creative thinking when it comes to warfare is the pivot that we need to make. We need to get away from the image. This is always going to exist, but the image of all special forces operators are big burly dudes with beards and tattoos that rappel onto the building, on top of a building, and slowly kick their way into a window and shoot everyone in the place. Right? That certainly is going to exist, but we need to get back to our embed with local national roots. We need to get back to our language skills have atrophied. We need to go back to learning languages of the groups that we're focusing on and start building up these countries, because these passive elements that we can do, these passive things that an operator can instill in partner forces, are what's going to deter these competitor superpowers from achieving their ends.
That's really interesting, because usually when you think about like asymmetry, it's usually the smaller unit or the smaller counterpart in the conflict creates that asymmetry. So you guys kind of have to think like top down, like create and respond to that asymmetry.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I keep harkening back to the Winter War, but I think one of the reasons why you guys were able to be so successful against the Soviets was you had small teams of Finnish soldiers, north of the Karelian Peninsula on skis, harassing logistics lines, harassing units, turning flanks, putting that, I taught when I was at the basic school. I used to teach the ambush class. One of the secondary, obviously the first objective of an ambush is to cause as much damage and destruction to enemy personnel and equipment as possible. Secondary effect of a good, well executed ambush is the mental aspect that you instill in the enemy. They are now going to be forever scared every time they conduct a resupply, every time they move along that route. Taking, being a large military like we are in the U.S. military and applying an unconventional mindset and being able to not only instill the fear of this is a big machine coming my way, but also they have aspects that have blended in with the locals and are harassing me from behind. You're putting the enemy in a mindset that they're not going to be thinking clearly. And that can go all the way up to the strategic level.
So to a single operator, then, does it take a lot of like ingraining that idea into it, that it's not just kicking down terrorist doors?
Yeah, I think you certainly have a lot of kids, especially all of us being from the Call of Duty and the Battlefield generation, where we have a very different view of what conflict should be, right? We all kind of joined up and think it's cool because of that type of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But being able to instill a mature mindset of, yeah, I may be able to do that, but I also need to be able to do other things. I think it's the other things that we need to start focusing on and recognizing. I gotta be up on my language. I gotta be able to speak with the locals, because speaking through an interpreter is not as effective. I need to understand how to be a diplomat. I need to read, things like that aren't as exciting, but are critically important. I think the individual operator needs to mature their thinking in that regard.
That's really interesting, and I think it's going to take a while for the whole military and that single operator to realize that, really. Yeah,
and I think the cool part is that as Finland integrates more into, not obviously not joining NATO, but NATO exercises and things like that, you get an exchange of ideas that wasn't possible in the past 20 years that I think is making everyone better and is making everyone's thinking a little bit faster, and everyone's able to pivot mindsets more. More conversations we have like this, the quicker those pivots are going to happen. So this is good.
Amen.
Exactly. Yeah, and that whole term of foreign internal defense. Was that it? Yeah. It's a really interesting.
It's a big focus, especially in the 18 Alpha MOS school. Like I said, you can shoot someone in the face all day, but chances are someone will take their place. What really works is creating stability and creating allies that are able to govern themselves and defend themselves effectively. That's the best thing that we can do against the Russias and the Chinas and the North Koreas of the world.
Yeah.
Yes. Almost like trying to remove yourself from the equation, basically.
Absolutely. Plus, that means I get to be home more with my wife and dog, which is always a positive.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the really important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, I think we've reached the end.
Yeah, I think we've established some really interesting conversations here.
I could continue with this for hours and hours, man, but
exactly.
I think we need to let you guys go, and I think we also
need to head home to our wives and our dogs.
Yeah.
Sure, I get that. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. This is an absolute blast, and Kiitos.
Yeah, Kiitos. Let's do this again sometime.
Let's do it again. It was our pleasure, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
And
thank you for listening to this very special episode of the Mighty Finland podcast. Thank you, Bo, still. And thank you also to our awesome sponsors. If you don't already, please also follow us on Instagram at Mighty Finland. That's all for now, folks.
That's all for now, yeah.
Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thank you.